There is a photograph sitting on Marcus Webb's desk. He has looked at it every single day for 3 years. Not because it makes him happy. Because it reminds him of something he is still trying to understand. The photograph shows 4 people. Marcus. His wife Emma. And their 2 children. They are standing in front of a building. Their building. The company they built from nothing over 12 years. Everyone in the photograph is smiling. Marcus most of all. What he didn't know when that photograph was taken was that his wife was already carrying a secret. A secret she had been carrying for 11 months. A secret that had saved 312 people. And was quietly destroying her from the inside. A secret that when Marcus finally discovered it, would force him to answer the hardest question of his entire life. Not whether he could forgive her, but whether he even had the right to judge her. This is their story. And it begins not with Emma's decision, but with a man named Raymond Costa. Raymond Costa was 54 years old. He had worked as a logistics coordinator for Webb Transportation for 9 years. Not a glamorous job. Not a highly paid one. But a steady one. And steady was everything to Raymond. Because Raymond was raising his 14-year-old daughter alone. Her name was Lily. And Lily had a heart condition that required monthly specialist appointments 2 hours away. Raymond's health insurance through Webb Transportation covered those appointments completely. Without it, the monthly cost would have been more than his entire paycheck. Raymond knew this. He thought about it every time he swiped his employee badge at the building entrance. Every time he sat down at his desk. Every time he drove Lily to her appointment and watched her read quietly in the passenger seat, not knowing how close to the edge her father walked every single month. Raymond had no idea that the company he depended on was dying. He had no idea that in conference rooms above him people were staring at numbers that pointed toward collapse. He had no idea that someone was about to make a decision that would determine whether Lily kept her insurance. Whether she kept her appointments. Whether she kept getting better. Raymond Costa just showed up every morning. Did his job. Swiped his badge. And trusted that everything would be okay. That trust was about to be tested in ways he couldn't imagine. And the person who would either protect it or shatter it was a woman he had never spoken to directly. Emma Webb. 12 years earlier, Marcus Webb had been working as a mechanic in a mid-sized garage in Sacramento. Emma was handling accounts at a small logistics firm across town. They met at a mutual friend's barbecue on a Saturday afternoon in July. Marcus was the kind of man who fixed things without being asked. Emma was the kind of woman who noticed problems before anyone else admitted they existed. Together they were dangerous in the best possible way. Within 8 months of meeting, they had mapped out a business plan on the back of a takeout menu. Within 18 months they had taken out a joint loan against everything they owned and rented their first truck. Webb Transportation started with that single truck. Marcus drove it himself the first 2 years. Emma handled every invoice, every contract, every account from a folding table in their spare bedroom. No weekends. No vacations. No guarantees. Just work and belief and the specific stubbornness of 2 people who had decided to build something together. 1 truck became 5. 5 became 20. 20 became a regional operation with 312 employees and contracts with some of California's largest distribution networks. People saw the success. They didn't see the years behind it. The panic attacks when payroll was due. The month they missed their own mortgage payment to cover a supplier. The night Marcus sat on the kitchen floor at 2 in the morning unable to breathe because a major client had threatened to cancel. Emma had sat beside him on that floor. Not saying anything. Just present. Just there. The way she always was. They had survived everything together. Until the year everything came at once. It started with one client ending their contract. A major one. The kind of loss that sends ripples through every other number on the sheet. Then fuel prices surged beyond projections. Then 3 competitors entered their primary market simultaneously. Then interest rates increased and refinancing their operational debt became suddenly, devastatingly expensive. One problem became 5. 5 became 15. The company that had survived 12 years of building began bleeding in ways that couldn't be quietly fixed. Marcus remained outwardly optimistic. It was his nature. His gift. The quality that had kept employees believing through hard times before. But Emma handled the numbers. And the numbers told a story Marcus's optimism couldn't rewrite. One night she sat alone at her desk after midnight. The building empty around her. The city quiet outside the windows. And she ran the projections one final time. Hoping she had made an error somewhere. Hoping one variable had shifted. Hoping for something she knew wasn't coming. The numbers came back the same. Web transportation had less than 90 days before bankruptcy became inevitable. 90 days before the contracts collapsed. 90 days before the suppliers walked. 90 days before 312 employees arrived at work one morning to find the doors locked. Emma sat with that knowledge alone for 4 days before she told Marcus. 4 days of carrying it by herself. Smiling at dinner. Helping their children with homework. Lying beside her husband at night while he slept without knowing. When she finally showed him the reports, he went silent. The kind of silence she had never heard from him before. Not thinking silence. Not processing silence. The silence of a man watching something he built for 12 years begin to disappear. He looked at the numbers for a long time. Then looked at her. What do we do? Emma had spent 4 days trying to answer that question. She still didn't have an answer. Before we go further, where are you watching this from right now? Drop your location in the comments below. We read every single one. The weeks that followed became a blur of desperation. Every investor they approached declined. Every bank they contacted rejected them. Every potential partner reviewed the numbers and quietly disappeared. The company had become toxic. The kind of situation sophisticated money runs from rather than toward. Then a call came from a man named Victor Langford. If you followed California business news, you knew the name. Victor appeared on magazine covers. He keynoted financial conferences. He donated publicly to hospitals and schools and appeared in photographs shaking hands with senators. His investment firm managed money for thousands of clients. Ordinary people who trusted him with decades of careful saving. Victor had a gift. The specific gift of making people feel safe. That easy confidence. That warm handshake. That way of looking directly at someone while he talked as though they were the only person in the room. Marcus and Emma arrived at his office with hope. They left with confusion. Because Victor had barely acknowledged Marcus during the meeting. Every question had been directed at Emma. Every conversation. Every glance. Emma noticed it immediately. So did Marcus. Neither said anything. Desperation leaves little room for comfort. And desperate people tolerate things they normally wouldn't. 3 days later Victor requested a second meeting. Without Marcus. Emma almost refused. Almost. But the company had 61 days left. So she went. The meeting was held at Victor's private estate rather than his office. That should have been the first sign. Maybe it was. But by then Emma was running out of options and time. Victor welcomed her warmly. Too warmly. They ate dinner on the terrace overlooking the city. Victor asked questions about the company. About Emma's role in building it. About the years before success arrived. He was charming. Genuinely interested. Dangerously good at making her feel seen. Then after the plates were cleared he placed both hands on the table and got to the point. I can save your company. Emma leaned forward. I can clear the debt entirely. Her heart rate accelerated. I can provide operational capital for the next 18 months. She could barely process what she was hearing. Everything they needed. Everything. Then Victor finished. For a price. Emma's stomach dropped. Not because of the words. Because of the silence after them. And the way he looked at her across the table. What price? She asked. Victor stood slowly and walked toward the window. The city spread below them in amber and gold. His back was to her when he answered. I don't want equity. Emma gripped the edge of the table. I don't want repayment. Her pulse hammered. Victor turned. And said one sentence. I want one evening with you. The room went absolutely silent. Emma stared at him. Certain she had misheard. Then certain she hadn't. Every instinct she possessed fired simultaneously. She stood. The chair scraped back hard against the floor. This conversation is over. Victor didn't flinch. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't threaten her. Simply spoke. 312 employees. Emma froze with her hand on her purse. That's how many people will lose their jobs. Silence. 312 families. She closed her eyes. 312 households depending on a decision you're making right now. Emma walked toward the door. Victor continued. His voice never rising. Never hardening. The calm of a man who had calculated every angle before she arrived. You know the numbers better than anyone. She reached the door. Within 60 days they'll lose everything. She opened it. One evening. She stopped. That's all I'm asking. Emma stood in the doorway. The hallway stretched ahead of her. The exit was 30 feet away. She could see it. She could walk straight to it. Get in her car. Drive home. Tell Marcus what Victor had proposed. Watch Marcus's face go through rage and then determination. Watch him fight to find another way. Watch him fight with everything he had. And then watch the company collapse anyway. Watch 312 people lose everything. Watch Raymond Costa explain to his daughter Lily why the insurance was gone. Why the appointments would have to stop. Why things were going to be different now. Emma stood in that doorway for 11 seconds. She counted them later. 11 seconds. Then she turned around. The funding appeared 48 hours after that evening. Millions. Wired directly. Exactly as Victor had promised. The transformation was immediate. Urgent debts cleared. Suppliers returned calls. Creditors backed away. Employee whispers in hallways shifted from fear to cautious relief. The company lived. Everyone called it a miracle. A mysterious investor. A last-minute rescue. The kind of story business journalists love to tell. Emma watched it all unfold. And felt nothing she expected to feel. She had saved the company. She had saved 312 jobs. She had saved Raymond Costa's daughter's insurance without Raymond Costa ever knowing his daughter's insurance needed saving. She had saved everything. And every morning after that she woke up beside Marcus and carried what she had done completely alone. She became quieter. More careful. More deliberate in the way she spoke. The way she moved through their home. The way she looked at Marcus when he wasn't looking at her. Marcus noticed. Of course he noticed. He had spent 12 years learning how to read this woman. Every time he asked what was wrong she smiled. Said she was tired. Said she was still recovering from the stress of the crisis. And every time he accepted that answer because he trusted her completely. That trust made everything harder. Meanwhile 3 floors below the executive offices. Raymond Costa arrived at work every morning at 7:45. Made coffee. Opened his scheduling systems. Coordinated the daily logistics for a company he didn't know had nearly collapsed. A company he didn't know had been saved at a cost nobody had told him about. He booked Lily's next specialist appointment. He filed the insurance claim for her most recent tests. He sent Emma Webb a company-wide email thanking the leadership team for navigating the difficult period. Emma read that email 4 times. Then closed her laptop and sat very still for a long time. Months passed. The company not only stabilized but grew. New contracts arrived. 3 new trucks were added to the fleet. A small bonus was distributed to all employees at Christmas. Raymond used his portion to buy Lily a new laptop for school. She showed him a project she had built on it the following weekend. He sat beside her at the kitchen table and watched her explain it and thought about how close everything had come to falling apart. He didn't know how close. He didn't know why it hadn't. He just felt grateful in the specific wordless way that people feel grateful when disaster passes without landing. And somewhere across the city, Emma Webb sat in her own kitchen, watching Marcus help their children with homework, and felt the weight of what she had done press down on her like something she would never fully put down. Emma had kept a personal journal since she was 19 years old. Not every day. Only when something happened that she needed to process somewhere private. Somewhere that wasn't her face. Somewhere that wasn't a conversation. Just words moving from inside her to somewhere outside her. The night she returned from Victor's estate she had written 4 pages. Then torn them out. Then rewritten them. Then closed the journal and placed it at the very back of the bottom drawer of her personal desk. Beneath tax documents from 3 years ago. Beneath an envelope of old photographs. Beneath everything. She never read those pages again. Because she didn't need to. She already knew every word by memory. What she didn't know was that one day someone else would read them. And that those 4 pages would change everything that came after. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon 11 months after the funding arrived. Marcus was reviewing quarterly financial reports in his office. A routine task he performed every 3 months. Numbers he had looked at hundreds of times before. He almost missed it. Almost. A single name appearing in transaction records from the rescue period. Not prominently. Not obviously. Just present in a way that felt slightly wrong to someone who knew every funding source the company had ever used. Victor Langford. Marcus frowned. He had been told the rescue package came through a private investment entity. He had never been given a specific name. Never asked for one. In the chaos of the rescue period details like that had seemed unimportant. The money arrived. The company survived. Details could wait. 11 months later. The detail was still waiting. And Marcus was finally reading it. He told himself it meant nothing. Wealthy investors often operated through multiple entities. Having Victor's name adjacent to the transaction was probably administrative. Probably explainable. Probably nothing. He closed the report. Opened another document. Tried to focus. His eyes kept returning to the name. Victor Langford. That evening he mentioned it casually at dinner. I saw Victor Langford's name in some of the rescue documentation today. Emma was serving food to their youngest child. She did not look up. Did you know he was involved directly? Emma placed the serving spoon down. Then picked up her glass. He was one of several people consulted during the process. Marcus nodded. Watched her drink. Watched her hand. Something was wrong. He couldn't identify exactly what. Just a frequency. A frequency 12 years of marriage had taught him to recognize. The specific frequency of Emma choosing her words very carefully. He didn't push it. Not that night. But something had shifted. Something quiet and irreversible. Over the next 2 weeks Marcus found himself paying attention differently. Not suspiciously. Just differently. He noticed that Emma deleted messages from her phone more frequently than she used to. He noticed that she had started closing her personal desk drawer more carefully. He noticed that twice when Victor Langford's name appeared on business news she had changed the channel without commenting. Small things. Individual things that meant nothing alone. Together they began assembling into a shape he didn't want to look at directly. Then came the afternoon Victor suffered a severe heart attack. The news broke across every business channel simultaneously. Marcus watched it in his office. Then looked through the glass partition toward Emma's office. She was already looking at her phone. Her face was entirely still. Not shocked. Not relieved. Just still. The way a person looks when they receive news they have complicated feelings about. News that is connected to something complicated. That evening Emma said she needed to handle some administrative matters related to the rescue documentation given Victor's medical situation. Marcus said of course. And watched her leave. And then did something he had never done in 12 years of marriage. He followed her. She drove to Victor's private residence. Not the hospital. The residence. Marcus parked a block away. Sat in his car. Watched the gate close behind her. Waited. 1 hour. Then another. His thoughts moved in directions he kept pulling them back from. Finally Emma emerged. Walking beside a man Marcus didn't recognize. An attorney. They exchanged documents briefly. Spoke. Then separated. Emma drove away. Marcus waited until she turned the corner. Then he approached the attorney. The conversation lasted less than 4 minutes. The attorney assumed Marcus already knew everything. That assumption was the most devastating 4 minutes of Marcus Webb's life. Because the attorney confirmed what Marcus had been pulling his thoughts away from for 2 weeks. There had been an agreement. A private agreement. Made the night before the rescue funding arrived. Between Emma and Victor Langford. Marcus drove home. He remembered every traffic light. Every turn. Every street sign. The way people do when the world has just reorganized itself around a new and terrible fact. Emma arrived home 40 minutes after Marcus. She walked through the front door and immediately saw him. Sitting at the kitchen table. The same table where they had built their dream. The same table where they had planned everything. No lights on except the one above the table. No television. No noise. Just Marcus. Waiting. Emma stopped in the doorway. And knew. Not what he knew. But that he knew something. Something that had changed his face in a way she had never seen before. Marcus looked at her for a long moment without speaking. Then said her name. Just her name. And something in the way he said it broke open the 11 months she had spent holding everything closed. Tell me what happened. Emma set down her bag. Walked to the table. Sat across from him. And for the first time since that night. She told the truth. All of it. The meetings. The numbers. The 90 days. The estate. The offer. The 11 seconds in the doorway. What she decided. What it cost her. What she had carried every morning since. Marcus listened without interrupting. Without moving. Without looking away. When she finished the kitchen was completely silent. The clock above the stove ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Outside a car passed slowly. Then Marcus stood up. Walked out of the kitchen. And went upstairs. No yelling. No accusations. No questions. Just silence. And the sound of their bedroom door closing. For 3 days they lived like strangers in the same house. Emma slept in the guest room. They spoke only about the children. Only about logistics. Only about the surface of things while everything underneath pressed upward like water behind a wall. Marcus went to work. Sat in his office. Looked at the photograph on his desk. The four of them outside the building. Everyone smiling. He tried to feel angry. Anger would have been easier. Cleaner. Instead he felt something more complicated. Something that kept shifting every time he tried to name it. He thought about the 90 days. The numbers Emma had shown him. The silence that had fallen over him when he understood they were finished. He thought about Raymond Costa. He had looked up employees during those 3 days, reading their files, putting faces to the number Emma had said. 312. He thought about Lily Costa. 14 years old. Heart condition. Monthly appointments. He had found her father's employee file and sat reading it for 20 minutes. Thinking about a man who showed up every morning trusting that everything would be okay. And a woman who had made sure it was. At a cost Marcus still couldn't fully hold in his mind. Victor Langford died 9 days after his heart attack. A registered envelope arrived at Webb Transportation 3 weeks later. Addressed to Emma. She opened it alone in her office. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. In the careful deliberate script of a man who had chosen every word slowly. Emma read it. Then walked to Marcus's office. Set it on his desk without speaking. And left. Marcus read it alone. Victor wrote that he had spent most of his life confusing power with worth. That he had driven away his wife and children through decades of control and manipulation. That wealth had become the only language he trusted. The only tool he believed could move people. When he met Emma he recognized something he had not seen in years. A person motivated entirely by love. Not love as a sentiment. Love as a decision. He had tested it in the cruelest way he knew. And she had passed a test she should never have been given. He wrote that he was not proud of what he had asked. That some actions exist beyond the reach of apology. That he understood that. Then he revealed something neither Emma nor Marcus had known. 22 years earlier Marcus's father had pulled Victor from a car wreck on a highway outside Sacramento. Stayed with him until the ambulance arrived. Refused to give his name. Victor had spent years trying to locate him. Found him 3 months before the company crisis began. Found out he had died. Found out he had a son named Marcus who had built a transportation company. The rescue funding had been partly repayment. Partly guilt. Partly the obsession of a man who had spent decades believing money could settle every debt. The letter ended with one paragraph. Marcus read it 3 times. I know this changes nothing about what I asked of your wife. I know explanations are not absolution. But I want you to understand one thing clearly. Emma Webb walked into my estate that night to save 300 people she felt responsible for. She walked out having paid a price no person should ever have to pay. Whatever you decide about your marriage, do not mistake what she did for weakness. I have spent 60 years surrounded by powerful people. What your wife did that night was the bravest thing I have ever witnessed. And I watched her do it knowing it would cost her the one thing she valued more than all 300 of those jobs combined. Your respect. She did it anyway. That is not betrayal. That is the most painful kind of love there is. Marcus folded the letter. Sat very still. Then opened his desk drawer. And found something he hadn't put there. A torn page. Folded once. Emma's handwriting. He recognized it immediately. She must have placed it there while he was reading Victor's letter. He unfolded it slowly. It was dated 11 months ago. The night she had returned from Victor's estate. 4 paragraphs. Written in the specific raw unguarded way that people only write when they believe nobody will ever read their words. I don't know if what I did tonight was right. I don't think right and wrong are the right words for it. I know that 312 people will have jobs tomorrow because of what I decided. I know Raymond from logistics can take his daughter to her appointment next month. I know Marcus will wake up tomorrow and still have the company he spent 12 years building. I know our children's lives won't change. I know all of that. What I don't know is how to sit across from Marcus at breakfast tomorrow and look at him the way I always have. I don't know how to be the person he thinks I am. I don't know if that person still exists. What I did tonight I did because I love him. Because I love what we built. Because I couldn't watch him blame himself for the rest of his life for losing something we built together. But I need to write this down somewhere even if I never read it again. I need one place in the world where the truth exists exactly as it is without explanation or justification or apology. I am not okay. I don't know when I will be. But I would do it again. And I think that might be the most honest and most painful thing I have ever known about myself. Marcus sat with that page for a very long time. The building was quiet around him. The city moved outside the windows. Somewhere 3 floors below him Raymond Costa was finishing his afternoon shift and thinking about what to make for dinner and whether Lily had remembered her afternoon medication. Marcus folded the page carefully. Placed it in his shirt pocket. Then stood up. And walked to Emma's office. I am not going to tell you their marriage recovered easily. Because it didn't. Trust that has been fractured, even for the most human of reasons, does not repair itself quickly or cleanly. There were months of silence. Months of difficult conversations. Months of 2 people trying to find each other across a distance that neither of them had chosen and both of them lived inside. What I will tell you is that they found their way back. Not to what they were before. To something different. Something that had been tested in a way most relationships never are. And had survived. Raymond Costa still works at Web Transportation. He was promoted to Regional Operations Manager 2 years ago. Lily is 17 now. Her last specialist appointment showed significant improvement. Raymond doesn't know the full story. He probably never will. But sometimes when he swipes his badge in the morning, he thinks about how fortunate he is. To have a job he trusts. A daughter who is getting better. A life that held together when it could have fallen apart. He doesn't know who to thank for that. He just feels grateful. And Emma Webb sits at the kitchen table sometimes in the early morning before the house wakes up. The same table where she and Marcus once planned everything. She drinks her coffee. Watches the light change. And carries what she knows about herself. That when the moment came, she made the hardest choice. Not the right one. Not the wrong one. The human one. The one that cost her everything she valued most. To protect everything everyone else depended on. There is no clean lesson here. No simple moral. No easy answer to the question this story asks. Only this. Some people walk through their lives and never face a moment that tests everything they believe about themselves. Emma Webb faced hers on a Tuesday night 11 months before anyone knew there had been a crisis at all. And she made her decision alone. In 11 seconds. Standing in a doorway. With everything on one side. And everything on the other. What would you have done? Not what you think you should have done. What would you actually have done? Tell me in the comments. Because I think the answer to that question tells you more about yourself than almost anything else. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone today. Not because we're asking. Because some stories deserve to travel further than an algorithm will take them. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. And we will see you next time.